the program today. We are honored to host you all today for a panel discussion on the topic child abuse linked to child safety in a pandemic and the roles of schools in intervention. We look forward to conversing about various facets of the subject. This discussion will be hosted by the core team of the Scis Justice Cell, which comprises Taveshi Bagaria, Rishita Dev, and myself. We also have Scis alum Sasha Agarwal, who will be managing this event with us. Taveshi is a 12th grader at Scis and is also the sports captain of South City International School. She is passionate in advocating for social justice and total equality. I am an 11th grader at Scis and am also the vice sports captain here. I believe in true justice and fair representation.
Thank you, Mahi. We will now be introducing our panelists. Our first panelist is our founder principal, Mr. John Andrew Babel. Sir has completed more than 30 years in the education field in various capacities. His passions include teacher development and student empowerment. He encourages his students to get involved with various NGOs in the city, and it is because of him that we could initiate the first justice cell in the country in Calcutta, one of the first. And he loves to speak at public functions on topics close to his heart, and we are honored to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you, Taveshi. Our second panelist for today is a special guest, Sir Partha Sarathi Das. Sir is a child rights activist working with the government and district legal aid services. He advocates and trains many organizations with regards to child rights and child protection. Thank you so much, sir, for being able to make it today.
Thank you.
Introducing one of our moderators. Our first moderator is Sasha Agarwal, who was the school captain of Scis in the year 2019. Sasha is presently on a gap year and she will be enrolling at Harvard this fall. Her academic interests lie at the intersection of neuroscience and psychology, and she is a passionate advocate of mental health and menstrual equity, both at the community level and on international platforms.
Second moderator is Rishita Dev. Rishita is a 10th grader at Scis. She works with several nonprofits all across the world and is passionate about writing research articles and poems. She is very active at advocating equality and is a proud feminist. I would now like to hand over to Rishita to proceed with the discussion.
Thank you, Taveshi. 62% of school-going children have faced corporal punishment, which tend to be extremely harsh. Yet all of these are considered effective punishments in many schools even today. Child abuse is one of the types of violence that is a multifactorial problem affecting the health and well-being of a large number of children worldwide. And we have identified certain trends of the aforesaid abuse. I'd like to start off today's discussion by bringing up one of the most important aspects, which is the trends in abuse among school-going children before the pandemic. I'd like Sasha Agarwal to add on her points now.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for I'm so happy to be doing this. I think especially the thing that we all especially floating around.
One second. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I think there's static. We can't hear you properly.
Can you hear me now? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
All right. So I think one of the biggest concerns that we've been able to see over the pandemic, and of course our guests will be able to shed further light on why that's been happening and what we can do to kind of mitigate that, is the fact that there have been a lot of cases of children being orphaned, and that obviously puts their safety at risk, and there's so many factors that come into play. And of course, when you see a child that might be the victim of abuse or a child that might be in unsafe conditions, it is necessary, and even the law mandates that you report that, right? But at the same time, I think there's a lot of confusion about the ways you can go about reporting that in a manner that will protect the welfare of the child and also abide by the law. We've been seeing on social media that children are being putting up for adoption they're being put up for adoption on Instagram, on social media handles. And that is something that is extremely, extremely detrimental to the welfare of a child, because there are checks that go into play when somebody is adopting a child. It is a legal procedure. And so I think, just given the fact that there's so many of us that are stakeholders in something like this, each of us has a relatively high probability of coming across a case of abuse or something that might put a child's safety at risk in some way. But I think a lot of us, the common person, lacks very little knowledge or understanding when it comes to the legal mandates that surround child protection in India. And so I'm hoping that this discussion and the topic being explored will be able to shed more light for us on the top on what we can do if we see cases of abuse, and how we can go about ensuring welfare when we report these cases.
Absolutely. So I'd first like to call upon our guest Partho sir to share his views, followed by Principal sir on the topic. So,
You're on mute.
yes, sir, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, so you're audible.
Yeah. My first thing is, before talking to the abuse and other things, I would like to say something that we are mainly emphasize or the principle on the basis of child abuse or child uh, vulnerability is constant. That is like four basic principles are there. One is survival, one is development, third is protection, and fourth is participation. So four that four principle, the child rights are available, and on that that basis the we can customize the abuse. Like before pandemic, we can say there are some various type of abuse, like physical abuse and emotional abuse also in school, and more or less some to some extent sexual abuse also are there, which has been shown before this pandemic period. And we always see that maximum children are going to school and coming to their home, but they are just neglecting with their parents because of a modern hurry. So these type of abuse uh, are seen before this pandemic. So we have seen all these things. That is the reality.
Principal sir, now I'd request you to add on your views on the topic.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to be present for a change where my ex-student is the moderator. I'm proud of my ex-student Shasha. She's moderating this discussion. And I welcome everyone to this very, very important discussion that we are having. The fact that I am present in a panel discussion about a very sensitive topic, which is commonly avoided by society, is proof itself that our thoughts are quite progressive. Sexual abuse is a very sensitive topic and widely rampant, yet not spoken about in society. I'm delighted to interact with Mr. Parthasarthi Das because I'm sure I will get a lot of more information. But the point being, as individuals, we live in a hypocritical society, and these matters are usually shunned and swept under the carpet. whether it's sexual abuse in school or whatever abuse you spoke about, the emotional abuse or scolding, I feel is much less as compared to sexual abuse that can happen at home at the hands of family members and loved ones. Domestic help, an uncle, an older cousin. And these are the symptoms that, of course, Mr. Parthasarthi is the expert, he will guide us. But the fact that we are all here as teachers, educators, is we want to make a difference. And being aware is one main important factor. We all are aware of such serious scenarios which happen in society where even the mother may know that the daughter is being sexually abused by a male member in the family and yet prefers to keep quiet about it. So, if there's no awareness and no support, support is very important. After being aware, one must know what should one do. We all know about POSCO, or do we really know about POSCO? What is POSCO? So, as the head of an educational institute, I feel it's my duty to have my stakeholders, the three stakeholders of the school, the parents, the teachers, and the community, should be on the same wavelength, whether it's making awareness about abuse that we are talking about, or helping out and reaching out to society. So that's in a nutshell, because it's a very vast topic and there's so much that we can speak about. But over to you, back again.
Absolutely, sir. As you mentioned, awareness is one of the most important aspects about any social issue. And of course, we all have been hit by the pandemic, which brought about changes in every aspect of our lives. So, Principal Sir, according to you, what would be these changes? What would be the changes in the trends which occurred after the pandemic hit us?
I think for every student and teacher who is involved in the school system, even for the parents, the the child going out to school is a sort of a stress breaker, in the sense for the family at home, that the child is moving out. For children in general, it gives them a chance to explore, interact, and obviously create new bondings and interact with people. Not all children are privileged to come to a good school, and not all children have privileged backgrounds. If I'm talking in general, when we look at, so there are two factors here. We can't assume that children are coming from a safe environment to a safe environment, the home environment and the school environment. So, for children who are in an abusive, stressful situation at home, coming to school before the pandemic was a stress buster, was a safe house. That is where teachers could find out, observe, okay, the child is having certain symptoms of something going wrong at home. Or, so there are two ways I said, maybe home is safe, but in a school, there could have been cases where someone, watchman, we've heard this case in the city, where they could be exploited by whoever and whatever. So it is sad that everyone is trapped in their homes, and that percentage of children who come from abusive backgrounds and children from the low income group who are going to a municipal school to study are now out of school. The dropout is very high, and they are forced into different types of activities to get in revenue rather than being in a school and getting education. So post pandemic, I mean, we are still in the process of pandemic, but in this pandemic zone where we are back locked in our homes, it's not that every child is safe in the home. So there are certain factors, and more concern is when you spoke about violence and emotional abuse and different types other than sexual abuse, those incidences could also increase when the child is at home and there's no studies and no access to the internet or a mobile phone or whatever. So it's a very, very grave situation when you look at the future of children at stake during this pandemic.
Partho, sir, would you like to enlighten us on the changes due to the pandemic as well?
Yes, I am agree with Mr. Andrew, and also add something that the main thing is we are seeing that after pandemic, the abuse or other vulnerability comes from mainly from cyber crime also, and also the POXO violence is also is going on because maximum child or children are staying their home, and POXO mainly happen from the relatives and the knowing person. Mainly the POXO cases is happening from their relative, their knowing person rather than unknowing person. So uh, as the loneliness and staying in home and with uh, online classes are still now going on during this pandemic period, the cyber crime is very much attracted to these children because of, I can say that there are sometimes like cyber bullying, hacking, porn and obscene consent shown, stalking and harassment, sexual exploitation, cyberbullying, as they are constant threat, identity related crimes are also there. But because it is happening, the main key identity of cybercrime is that the place online due to low monitoring. The parents and other adult person also are working or busy with their other work because they are also stressed due to pandemic. Many parents are uh, lost their jobs, and they are all are uh, uh, just wandering for their job. So therefore the lack of monitoring is also there. The purpose of exploitation and abuse, the perpetrators also what is doing that the variably skilled antisocials, they are also misfits and malcontents in this including the professional hackers. So the main thing is that we should monitor the children also uh, during their taking education in online, because what they are doing with the phone, with the website, so the parents should also monitor about this. Or otherwise we can see that latest recently we have shown a news that maximum the maximum in this pandemic period, various labor and other migrated work person who are coming from other state to here in our state, and their children also become the vulnerable at this moment, and they are used to traffic to other country, other state because of economical factor. And recently two girls also rescued from Habra, you know, in newspaper. They also went for their job, and after that they rescued that they have been trafficked. So these are the main problem are now showing in this our society.
Thank you, sir. Those our esteemed panelists gave an absolute amazing insight of the issue. Now I'd like Sasha Agarwal to add on her viewpoints.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing all of that insight with us. And I think it's given us so much perspective into this secondary crisis that's arisen out of the primary health crisis that our country and the world is facing so far. And I think especially, if we're just looking at the different kinds of violence, there are definitely exacerbating factors that are related to the pandemic that are resulting in an increase in these cases. If we're looking at domestic physical abuse and domestic sexual abuse, now that children are at home for every single day, and they no longer have that safe space to go to. They no longer have a school where they can be physically for a long time period. That definitely increases the risk and their vulnerability to these cases. Even when we're looking at emotional abuse and behavioral abuse, things like that, these also have increased, not merely because children have been home for longer periods, but also because of all of the financial stressors and the external stressors that every family is facing right now owing to the unprecedented nature of the pandemic. And then, of course, we have to remember as well that there are children who have lost parents. There are children who have had to shift in with other family members and other relatives. And more often than not, these can create further danger for these children. And something that I really wanted to touch on as well was, we know that in general there have been an increase in cases, but I think there are specific groups of children that also have an increased vulnerability to abuse. And so now some of these groups of children, it can be gender-based, it can be females, for example. It can also be students and children that identify with the LGBTQ plus community. It can also be students that are disabled or are suffering with mental illnesses. And I think all of these conditions also kind of precipitate and result in an increase in vulnerability for certain groups. So I was wondering, I think something that we could really perhaps touch on is how we can ramp up protection measures and intervention measures, especially for these incredibly vulnerable groups of children. And I think, just to sort of put it into perspective, there's a helpline that deals with child abuse and child protection cases called Childline. And in the first 10 days of the pandemic and the lockdown back in 2020, from 20th March to 31st March, they saw a 50% increase in distress calls. So it certainly is a crisis that is rising immensely. And now that we've been hit with the second wave, it is time that stakeholders start viewing these things as national priorities. Something that I would specifically perhaps want to talk about or draw this discussion to is, while of course abuse is massive right now and there are legal protections, there's definitely a gap between cases of abuse and reporting of abuse to legal systems. And I think a great potential solution to this, or something that we can do, is have teachers step in, because teachers are working with children on the front line and they do share personal contact with children. And so I was wondering if we could perhaps discuss various avenues through which the school and teachers and educational institutions can serve as this frontline support system in terms of looking out for abuse, reporting abuse where possible, and doing something to perhaps bridge the gap that we've seen evolve into such a great crisis over the last year, especially.
As Sasha Agarwal already brought up the point on identification of the issues, awareness comes a long way, but we need to first identify what are the issues we are going through, and only then we can come up with perspective and possible solutions to combat them. So that brings us to our next question. Parthosa, according to you, what are the biggest gaps in identification and intervention of the mentioned issue and problem which we are facing?
Well, the first thing is, actually I can say the gap is that mainly the awareness, like we do not know the stakeholder, which stakeholder are working with these child rights. So there are various stakeholder are there in India, in our state. So if we know the stakeholders who are doing with the child rights, and including school teacher also, not only school teacher but also the school student. So in collaboration with all these stakeholders, we can find out the gap. On that level, we can say that in government level there are that there are integrated child protection scheme is there, is running with the central government, with the collaboration with state government, and each district there is district child protection unit. So who are doing with the child rights and child orphan abandon and child who are and child marriage and other all these thing type of work are going on with the district child protection unit. District child protection unit is the monitoring authority in the district. So we in Kolkata we have also the district child protection unit, and after that in grassroots we have the ward level child protection committee. In Kolkata there is ward level child protection committee, and other also there in suburban and subdivision there are block level, village level child protection committee are there, where the member is that there are the grassroots level, there are student also ex officio member in this committee. That is in world level child protection committee, 4 students coming from local school are also the member of this committee. The teacher also the member of this committee, and including local councillor and other DCPU member are also the member of this committee. So if we know the stakeholders name and stakeholders who are working with this child rights, child abuse, so we can find out the gap, we can linkage the gap, we can linkage with the stakeholder to demolish all this type of abuse and of other things.
Absolutely, sir. Principal, sir, would you like to add on to the question?
Yes, thank you, Rishita. Awareness of two types. One, Shasha had mentioned that how can schools help? Now, Mr. Parthasarthi Das brought up a very important point that one, how can teachers be enabled and empowered to find out or be observant whether there is anything going wrong at home by observing a student? Yes, we are in a pandemic and students are at home, but yet, if teachers and class teachers become vigilant enough, notice, try and connect with cases they may feel all over, all across, any teacher, that they feel that someone is vulnerable or someone is behaving oddly, they should try and go ahead. But what? How? So, just being aware or sensitized to the fact that a student may be vulnerable is not sufficient. What Mr. Parthasarthi Das tells us that, okay, you're aware, I'm a teacher, I notice something going wrong, I become aware, I get in touch with, then what do I do next? I've only heard of POSCO. How many of us know even the full form of POSCO? How many of us have really got involved with the right? It was coincidentally started on 14th of November, Children's Day. But what is POSCO? Fine, that is not within our control. But I think every school, every educational institution should have a list of NGOs and contact numbers whom they can contact. At this point, I must mention that I'm very grateful to Agnes Topo of International Justice Mission, who connected with me a couple of years back and said, "Sir, we are from International Justice Mission and we would like to work with your students." And I warmly welcome the idea, because here was an organization which does grassroots level, not superficial, grassroots level work with actual cases right across the city, not just Kolkata per se, but in the remote areas, borders, working along with the police. And because the South City kids have been so dynamic, involved, energized, willing to give of themselves to society, and our vision, my vision is that my teachers and students not think that education is just go to class and teach a subject and finish the curriculum or syllabus, but to get my students more aware of what's happening beyond our bubbles and cocoons. And so we initiated the International Justice, the Justice Cell of South City International School, with the whole support from International Justice Mission. But yet, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. We have a long way to go. Every student or every teacher of mine who's present here may not be aware, and I'm sure is not aware of, okay, I know a child is suffering or getting some problem, or in my vicinity, in my pada, I know something is happening very odd, or some young girls or boys are being sexually exploited. What do I do? Do I just sit quiet about it? As a teacher, what do I know? I know nothing. I know my curriculum, I know my syllabus, I know what I should teach. I have no awareness or clue whom do I contact. And I think our school justice cell, so ably connected by students and International Justice Mission, should now make it a point to bring about more awareness. Contact numbers. Shasha had said teachers should do something. Agreed. And we should first do it. Charity begins at home. We should make our teachers empowered first, be aware of knowledge, of information, and then we step out. And then the Agnes Topo is there to connect with schools, and then we could have take this further. This is to be spread among schools, have panel discussions, have more awareness, have more information. Dissemination of valid relative information is extremely important to see that our educators truly empower the child and try and think, how can I go beyond just being a teacher, widen the scope. So there's a lot of work. It's just the beginning, and there's too much of work to be done. I'm sure people like Agnes can share with us that however much you involve people in it, it's still less. It's still very, very less. You just type in COVID situation, sexual abuse, you'll get loads of papers and information right across the world. It's not India. Don't think it's India specific. Sasha would have a lot of data of how relevant and how global this is, that is happening across the world, that sexual perpetrators are on the rise everywhere. And as Mr. Parthasarthi Das rightly pointed out, it's because of our dependence on online. Earlier, we used to have talks and we used to call police from the cybercrime and speak to, don't post this, don't post. But now your whole life is on the internet. And how much are parents going to be vigilant and keep a watch, because you may be sexually abused online and yet you don't know what to do. So if our justice cell, our students can get that relevant information, form some helpline number or something where, okay, a child of the school is being targeted online, what do we do? Who do we go to? Who is going to help us out? And these are things that a friend may not share with another friend. It's the stigma that is attached. How do I say? Maybe something wrong with me. And the body shaming that takes place in general among individuals and girls or boys, whatever. I maybe I'm too effeminate, a boy may think. That's why I've been targeted. How do I discuss that? Shasha brought out LGBTQ and so many other things. I think as educators, we have a very, very strong role to play in empowering our teachers who can then channelize proper avenues for students to speak about things that are bothering them. There should be a in two-way information of knowledge. And this is knowledge which educators basically don't have or have never got involved, or it may be there, but at a micro level. Every educator should be involved, because we come from a background and we think that, oh, we are in this bubble and cocoon and all our kids are safe and sound, but this doesn't always work like this. There are so many things happening, and yes, things, mental health is problems of mental health are definitely on the rise, not just about abuse but in general for everyone involved. So it's just compounding the fact. So I think till schools remain closed and kids are going to start online, have online classes, we can, in the meanwhile, empower our teachers, give them relevant contact numbers, get in touch with NGOs. Agnes Topper from International Justice Mission or our Justice Cell can work more on sending lists, even on the school website. These are the numbers where one should be aware. Who do I contact? I don't want to mention it to anyone. I may share it with a friend. I may share this information with a teacher who's close to me. But what will the teacher? So there are too many factors involved. But I think we need to be more proactive and have a database of NGOs who can help, contact helpline numbers. That is most relevant. So a student who is being having maybe cybercrime problems and being targeted, whatever, no student would know who do I contact, who do I call, who do I speak to. Not aware. Is it 100 number that, or is it a? So these are things which we need to work on. A lot of work needs to be done. Thank you.
As I guess our panelists very rightly put that we've just touched the tip of the iceberg and we have a long way to go, starting from identifying the problems, empowering our teachers and even students. And I just like to mention, as Principal Sir said, we should start working on sharing databases so our students or teachers or even parents can start sharing their problems. Coincidentally, we at the Justice Cell are currently working on developing these helplines, and very soon we will put it out for everybody to see, and we are definitely going to work on it. Moving on to our next question, which is, let's say, a continuation of the first one. Identifying problems is one of the core aspects in order to combat any issue. And we need to make sure everyone's aware of these issues before they know about the problems, because possible solutions only come when you know what you are going through. So, sir, according to you, what are the causes of these gaps? And before that, I'd also like to call Sasha Agarwal to add on her question.
Absolutely. So thank you so much again to our panelists for sharing so much insight with us into the problems that exist right now and how we can go about at least thinking of solutions for them. And Sir pointed out some very, very imperative questions and showed us how we need to adopt a very multifaceted approach to thinking about solutions. And some of these imperative questions had to do with how does a teacher identify abuse in the first place? What do they do next? What does the law mandate that they do? What should they be doing ideally? Who do they reach out to? What are the next steps? And I think all of that is so relevant to be discussed, especially when we have so many stakeholders present at this panel discussion right now. So, Mr. Das, I was wondering if you could shed some light on what the POCSO says about mandated reporting of child abuse cases. If an adult comes across a case of abuse or is made aware of a case of abuse, are they legally mandated to report that case of abuse? Should they report it? And if so, how do they go about reporting it to a trustworthy source?
Well, the first thing is the POCSO Act itself says that I would like to say first that the maximum the sexual abuse or not only with the girl child, also the number of male child is rather than greater than the girl child in this situation, and the POCSO Act uh, uh, is doing with irrelevant of the sex, like boy child or girl child. So the fact is that each and everybody who know the abuse about the children can make an FIR before the police station, irrespective of any person, not only the police, not only the school teacher, all each and every person who are aware about the child abuse can file the FIR before the police station. And the act says itself says that if a person knowingly not doing that FIR, he can be criminalized, or he can be punished. So the fact is that you have to, whenever you know about the abuse of the child, you have to file an FIR before the police station. It is your duty, each and every person. So every person can file the FIR before the police station. After that, police have to do all this procedure first and foremost, including his medical treatment, his counseling if need, his or her counseling. He can contact with the child welfare committee. He can contact with the district child protection unit. He can contact with the child line. 1098 number is the child line's number. You know all these things, I think. So you can, the police have to do all these things, including counseling, including provide the support person. If a child need support, because many person are not know about the POXO Act, what is their right, what they can get. So the support person can provide all these things, and these support persons will be or can be provided by the CWC. Then what happened? The police have to report before the CWC after filing the FIR. Then the CWC provide the support person to that victim child or victim girl, to provide the support person that what is her right, his or her right, like to get a free legal aid, to get a victim compensation. So all these things are there, which is not only the main thing, but it is the mandatory provision of the case. So I can say many persons are not know about the support person regarding under POXO Act. It has been clearly said in POXO Rule 2020 that a support person shall be provided by the CWC to the victim girl or boys. So the main thing is, first is FIR, recording FIR. Second is recording medical testing, and 164 CRPC, the which is main thing. And also, if needed, the child cannot be stayed in his or her home due to the abuse has been happened in his house from their relative or their other parents, like uncle or other things. So the child can be placed in a institutional care, that is called home, which is run by the NGO or government organization. So CWC can do each and everything itself, like counseling. If need counseling, the DCPU can provide counselor. And also, you know, I can provide, I can say you that the District Legal Aid Services Authority, that is DALSA, in collaboration with SALSA, the State Legal Services Authority, has introduced one place called Bharsa. You know the Bharsa. There is, you can get free legal aid, you can get free counseling, you can get free psychological counseling. So all these type of things are there to provide a POXO victim. So you should to know all these things, how to provide that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing so much insight into the legal proceedings that already exist, and also just our inherent responsibilities as citizens of the country and our responsibility to the people around us and the children around us. And as we come to the end of this panel discussion, thank you so much for everybody for just coming in and being there to speak about such a pertinent issue today. I think we can certainly conclude that as various stakeholders, as institutions, as faculty members, as students, as ex-students even, we all certainly have a responsibility to start taking steps and to start taking initiative in our capacity, because there is something that each of us can do. And so John, so I would like to address this last question to you, just as we start thinking about steps that we could potentially take. While we've spoken about reporting and everything, we would never want it to reach the stage where a child shows physical signs of injury and signs of physical abuse, where a teacher sees signs or bruising, sees injuries, and needs to report a case. We wouldn't want it to ever reach a stage where a child is so traumatized by incidents that it begins to manifest in their outward behavior, and people begin to pick up on those signs. And of course, prevention is always better than cure. Every day of added stress or abuse does have very tangible long-term impacts for a child. And so if we're just thinking about how we can empower children and our students as well with more awareness, about the different kinds of abuse that they can face, how they can navigate situations, stay safe, and more importantly, be able to identify themselves when they might be at risk of abuse and reach out to a trusted adult or a trusted professional. Um, there are so many things we can do. So, of course, there's definitely awareness on sexual education that is so imperative when we're talking about sexual abuse. There is awareness that needs to be created about cyber safety, especially when children are entering the space at such an early age. There is a need to disseminate resources. There is a need to prioritize mental health and disability sensitivity in schools. So, sir, I was wondering, what do you think are some of the first steps, the steps that we should prioritize as various stakeholders connected to an educational institution?
Well, thank you, Sasha. You just pointed out that there are so many things that one has to do and one could do. And now, when you speak about prioritize, the first thing is you need to, as I mentioned earlier, you need to get all the teachers on the same page, on the same platform. And it's not just senior teachers or middle school, just being a teacher. So we have planned some workshops with a organization to maybe one school reopens so that teachers can get empowered. We have been doing this in the past, but it's a long time now. During the pandemic, we've not touched on that aspect. So we may again refresh this information for teachers. We need to work more with maybe an organization like International Justice Mission, get more details. Connection is most important. We need the justice cell of South City to get us relevant data, and we need, well, because any learning from peer to peer, as you rightly know, is much more beneficial and imperative as compared to adult to student. So if our justice cell, our student council come to me with ideas and suggestions that on a virtual platform at present, can we do this? Can we? I need awareness. I need empowerment. How do we do awareness and how do we empower our students? These are ways and methods that we need to work on. So as everyone is at home and teachers and students involved, we'll have to find out ways. And as special ed department people who are present here, they are also involved, they know a lot happening. But now you just don't need to belong to a special ed department, special needs, but every individual has to be aware of how to tackle the situation. So this is not a department specific, but this is a individual specific issue where each teacher in the organization, each staff member, rather than using the word teacher, maybe someone from the admin may come across certain things in the physical world. So we need to let them know that these are things which can go wrong. We've already been speaking to bus drivers and taking workshops for them. And so that was all done in a physical world where the bus drivers and didis and all were told what they should do, what they should not do, good touch, bad touch. These workshops are also conducted for pre-primary level parents and children, in the presence of parents, calling in special educators, calling in special people who can do it. But now that we post-COVID, we'll have to adapt to a blended learning and a hybrid type of world. We'll have to see how we can keep our students safe. But I keep saying not just within, but extend into intra and inter. Our students should work to see that people around or other communities also get empowered with the same type of information. So there are newsletters, there are discussions. We can have more panel discussions with principals of other schools or special educators, teachers from colleges, schools. So there are different things that one has to plan out and find time for, because this is not something superficial. This is something very, very integral in addition to teaching and the myriad activities that go on within a school. So yes, I'm sure this event today would certainly throw up more ideas, and my team of students of the Justice Cell will come up with so many things that they should be implemented in the schools to
I'm assuming Principal Sir
Yeah, so
lost
I
connection. Yes, sir, continue.
yeah, I'm come back. I was out of it. So I think that concludes it. I said there are so many things that one needs to do, and we need to work on it.
Thank you,
So
sir.
thank you, Sasha, for your question.
So I presume I speak on behalf of everybody present here. Hearing such wonderful insights from our principal and our guest, Partho sir, has been an astounding experience, and especially co-moderating it with one of my favorite pass outs, Sasha Agarwal. I'd now like to hand over the proceedings to Mahi Singh to deliver the vote of thanks.
I would now like to deliver the vote of thanks. On behalf of the Justice Cell of South Sydney International School, I would like to extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all panelists for discussing this important issue and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. It was truly an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you all for tuning in.
So thank you all to being with you, and I am very feeling proud to being with you. So thank you all, and thank you IGM also.
So that brings us to the end of today's event. It was great having all of you here, my respected teachers, principals, and guests. And yes, now we're officially at the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.